Alright kids, so we have made some changes here. Kind of brought about by chasing a rough. Last weekend we chased the rough from hell. And man, just trying to get the drums to slam like the rough took forever. And I just started to realize, like, man, I'm doing something wrong. There has to be an easier way, and I want to be better, so it's kind of the whole thing. So I'm going to give a little rundown as to what we figured out here. First thing we did was we had kind of layers upon layers of things inserted on the drums, and we kind of took that out, took everything off. We had on the kick, we had the EVQ, a boiler, and the punch 10, the Furman punch 10, and we started to kind of break that down. On the snare, we had the boiler and the punch 10. Bass, we were using the distressor. So what we did was we kind of took that off, and I started kind of researching and kind of asking around to all my buddies, and I started with the snare, and we took the boiler off. Well, we actually took everything off, then we put the boiler on, and we got a decent snare sound happening. And we printed it, and then we took the boiler off, and then we used just the SSL compressor, and then we printed it, and then we went and put the distressor on, and we messed with that for probably a good half an hour, just kind of dialing in sounds, experimenting with. I think we ended up at 6-1 with the high pass on, and distortion 3 was pretty nice, and not hitting it too hard. The thing I noticed about the snare with the distressor, it gets really bright if you hit it really hard. I kind of didn't like that. It was nice when you just tapping into the yellows. And we printed that, and then when we listened back, the boiler actually we liked the least. And the SSL was nice, and it had a cool fatness to it, but the distressor had, I don't know, it added this little aggression and a little more like length to the snare, and also obviously just way more flexible. The SSL onboard EQs are pretty much less or more. There's not a lot to do with them. With the distressor, obviously you can kind of shape the sound. So we ended up, and then kind of as we shaped the sound and went back and forth, we really started to like the distressor. So we kept the distressor on the snare, and then we at that point we also went back to the bass, which had the distressor on it, and then we went between the distressor on the bass, the SSL inline, on channel compressor, and the boiler. And on the bass, that's where I liked the boiler better. The boiler just had all this booty, and I've got the two mods. I've got the Barisi and Brower, distortion and low end, or whatever, like side chain. It allows more low end through, however you call it. So we ended up putting the boiler on the bass, and that was freaking cool. That sounded great. Then we went over to the kick, and we went between. We set up the boiler. Again with I think I ended up liking distortion in and the and the low end boost in. I went with that, and we printed it, and we went to the SSL and printed it, and then we tried my Rev F and printed it, and that was like not even close. The boiler was like way better than all the other two. It was so much better. The I didn't really care for the 1176. It just, I don't know, I like lost low end or something, and the SSL kind of lost a little bit of low end too. The side chain thing on the boiler is really cool, so we ended up keeping that on the kick, and we had the Fatso on rooms inserted on the board on the drum rooms, and I took that, I took out the insert and I messed with the SSL online bus compressor, or the online compressors, or I don't know what you call them, the channel compressors, and I got them sounding really good, and in a way I kind of like those better, I think, because the thing with the Fatso is it's very, it was, we were slamming it and we were getting all this, and I think that thing is really attractive, like when you're kind of listening to it, you're like, wow, listen how cool that is, but then when you're like trying to get drums to slam, like all that like roomy mojo, all it does, it's just it either softens things or it makes it just creates too much space, and that was the thing I was learning by reading all these things on, how, like with Randy Staub and how he's been mixing some of the Mutt Lang production stuff, and just the things that I read and after my research, and just and then listening to the record, you're like, geez, it's a lot less room than you think. It's a lot of just kick and snare, man. It's like a freaking dance record. Also was listening to like Billy Idol, and it was a few things, and again going back to chasing this rough was like a dance rock kind of thing, and it was like, I don't know, but the thing was, the rough had some space on the drums, but we were starting to kind of realize it was more like snare verb. And then that was what I was reading too, is, and we do the thing where you put the reverb only on the trigger and all that, but anyway, that's kind of, that's where we're at on that. So anyway, I took the Fatso off of rooms, and I inserted it on my stereo trigger return here, and this has kind of been like, I don't know how to put this, I always feel like I'm struggling to get the trigger to slam right. Like I always feel like I hear other guys using triggers and it's always like bam goosh, and I always feel like my snare return, there's something not jiving with it. It's just not powerful enough or something. So I basically just took everything off. I took even the EQ and I took the compressor off, and I inserted the Fatso, and we started to mess around with I think we ended up with no compression. I've ended up putting the warmth on 4, and let me see, I'll put it on. I think tranny was on, yeah. Well, see, we ended up going back to just this bus. All right, and Woody was hung up. Oh, we got to do a little compression. Anyway, so that was the setting. But the more we messed with it, it started to really slam, and it was like the first time that I'd heard like kind of slate triggers for the snare starting to happen for me here. It was better than before. So we messed with it some more, really got it sounding good, and then messed with the EQs. The other thing that we did that was kind of a realization, this whole, this is like the ongoing quest to become the best I can be. So I'm kind of one of those dudes that's always moving forward and always trying to be better. But on these channels that I had inserted, kick, snare, I had snare trigger, well, not snare, bass had an insert on it. I was also using a little bit of compression on the board, and I started to take that out and realize that was kind of screwing me up. Like that was like making my job harder, because I was kind of, in a way dealing with like two layers of compression that at times were fighting each other. I took them out, and also the concept being is that I took all this extra crap out of this, you know, instead of like layers of things on my chain, you know, I mean, like I watch Barisi and he's got like 15 zillion things on everything, and it was so exciting, but then I realize it just doesn't work for me. I mean, it works for him, but man, it's just too, I don't know, man. It just doesn't work for me. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, so then I stripped now that I've stripped off the layers and I've got like pretty much like one primary thing per element, kick, snare, and now I can really work that one piece and really push it. And then I realized that if I take and push that distressor on the snare and I get it right, it's infinitely more powerful and has more impact than layers of shit all over it. All different this and that and EQ and that. Like, get all that crap off and just focus on the distressor. And then it started to happen. And then that was kind of the concept. The other thing I did was I took the ride off of the board. Forget the ride. Who cares about the ride? We cut it out during the song. If there's a ride part and we need it, we'll just put it on the overs. I don't care. Ride, who cares about ride? Ride cymbals do not sell records. I added a second kick track, K2, and this I learned from the master. You know, the more like things like kick and snare, the more you can have them on different channels, the more tone you get, the more power you get, because there's more iron. It's not just a volume thing. It's not just, oh, we'll just turn the kick up here. Turning the kick up here and having it on two channels is not the same thing. Trust me. Because if this is down and I turn this up, the kick gets louder. But if I bring this in and I can treat them kind of differently, and now I've got two sets of whatever the hell, op amps and stuff that's on this thing, it just creates more tone. So this K2, like this, I send my kick in, my kick out, and my kick trigger here. Kick out I treat in Pro Tools. I filter everything above 400. So that all I get is my thing going on. But then here, I think just to experiment, I sent everything, and then I ended up, I think, just sending the trigger to here. And again, I can do anything I want. I can have a different set of triggers here. But my concept on this was, you know what? I want this one to be the booty. So we added a little bit of low end, and I kind of treated it on the board here. And then I thought, oh, you know what? We pulled out that Furman Punch 10. Let's insert the Punch 10 on the kick, too, the K2. And when we did that, that's when the dance party started. And I'm not kidding you. Even Woody was over here, shaking his booty. Man, it was killer. It was absolutely killer. And the thing is that for the last year or so, this thing is stereo. Left, there's two sides to it. One was to the snare, one was to the kick. So I had it set one way that was kind of natural, that worked for both of them. And I never was able to touch it because if I turned it up, I wanted more kick, then it overwhelmed the snare. So I always just kind of left it where it was. Now it's just kick, and I can crank it, and I can turn it up, and I can turn it down, and I can do whatever the hell I want with it. And it's not attached to the snare, and that, my friend, is freaking awesome. And this thing is killer. This is a subharmonic generator that is extremely fast moving. Unlike the Cosmos, which is more like lush and, kind of, it's more like a grandma hug. That's a grandma hug. That's a grandpa punch in the face. And man, is it killer on kick. So anyway, we get this thing going on kick, and now we've got the kick slamming like never before. We've got the snare trigger slamming like never before. No SSL compression, inserted fatso, and we are, I wouldn't say we were burying the needle, but man, we were hitting that sucker, and it sounded killer. And then on the snare over here, we've got the distressor. This is our primary snare, like top and bottom, our live snare. Snare trigger returns in stereo because it's attached to, room reverbs and convolution this and whatever the hell that, and NRG left and right. So anyway, after messing with that, it really sounded, it was light years better. I was wishing that I had done this a week earlier before I spent 3 days and almost jumped off the Empire State Building trying to chase this frickin' rough. This rough that was my nemesis, which actually, you know, is going to end up, in hindsight, is the most beautiful thing that could have ever happened to me, because it was like a major wake-up call. Now we go to base. I'd taken distressor off, and I tried distressor and boiler back on it just to see, and boiler on the base is absolutely phenomenal. It is phenomenal. I think we already talked about that. Yeah, because it's letting all that low end in. It's just killer. And it's gritty. And that's what I liked about the distressor. You know, I switched over from the 1176 to the distressor because I felt with the 1176 I was getting like all the fatness and the vibey thing of the bass, but I wasn't hearing the playing as articulately. Like I wasn't hearing the clanking and the strings. Like when I put the distressor on, I heard the strings, and I was like, that's what I want. I want to hear more playing. It seemed like the 1176 in a way kind of softened it, but then returning and then putting the boiler on was the same effect. But now it's kind of was a combination, because now with the low bump, or the unfilter of the low, the bass had more booty than it did with the distressor. Very, very nice. Then we went over here and we took all these dudes out of output mode. This is our send to our parallel compression. And we were able to actually turn everything off and solo our parallel compression, which honestly is not the easiest thing to do on this board. Anybody that works on a 6000 knows what I'm talking about. So, well, because we're not in the center section. If we use the center section, I think AFL here will allow you to solo it and hear it, but we don't use the center. We use the Avocet. So because of that, we don't get to just, you know, it takes it takes a minute or so. So a lot of times in the midst of a mix, I don't necessarily solo it. I just kind of go with it, turn it up, turn it down. Anyway, I soloed it and listened to it. And we spent a little time with it. I was reading some Chris Lord Algae notes too, and did some of the things that he had talked about. Another thing, made sure there was no compression on here, and we hit that thing a little bit harder, not intensely hard, but a little bit harder, and did a little bit of EQ shaping, and got that sounding so much better. And then when we pulled the drums back in, it was like, oh man. And then when we went back to, you know, because we had originally printed our drum tracks from, you know, this whole thing took us maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours to kind of go through. And then we went back and listened to the originals, and then we were listening to where we were at, and it was like, it was absolute night and day. So, yeah, there you have it. Then we were using SPL Transient Designer on the snare. And my buddy's like, gotta try the Trans X, and we tried it, and it was better. And I got Trans X. The other thing we got going on was we have this software called Auto Align, and when we went to Pro Tools 11, we kind of somehow lost it. I don't know if it was a licensing issue or it wasn't AAX at the time. I don't know, whatever. We didn't have it anymore. We got that fixed and put that on. That's humongous. That's by Radix, Sound Radix, Auto Align. That is like a sophisticated kind of phase align polarity software. And it, you know, with what we can do in as mixers, we can do some phasing, like, you know, obviously you put the thing in phase, or if you're doing guitars, you can do it off the peak transient or whatever, and obviously you can look at the waveform and see the polarity. That's easy. But this does phase over the duration of the playing. Like, I don't know how it does it, but it does something different, and it's pretty badass, and it really tightens up the drums, makes them punchier, makes the snare louder too. The kick and snare pop out more. So we put that on, and then we had the Trans X on, and then while we were on there, the Sound Radix thing, they have this software called Drum Leveler, and we demoed it, and that is killer. It's like a super sophisticated gate, and we put it on the snare, and it was like Well, you guys will just have to try it. But anyway, we got that, and we put that on now. So now we're working on these same drums from 5 hours ago now, and now we've done all this stuff. We've changed all this stuff on the board. We've got the auto align. We've got Trans-X. We took off all the SPL. We've got this drum leveler now on, and this stuff is slamming. And then we start going through samples and improving the samples that we're using. And some friends sent me some samples, and we researched, and oh man, it's absolutely slaughtering now. Also, while we were soloing, we've got this 610 on coming out of bus off the snare and the trigger, and the 610 returns here. And this is really a fantastic thing for snare too, man. If anybody ever gets a chance to grab one of those, man, it's just the Spectrasonics is just pure evil. And we also had demoed, my buddy brought over his LA2, and we tried it against our stay level, and you know, they're both really cool, but we just kind of like the LA2 better. And I found a guy that had a LA2, and he wanted a stay level, and I had a stay level, and I wanted an LA2, and there it is, man. Got new old stock Muller tubes in there, and that thing is just killer. Trying to think of any other things we did. And the last of the Mohicans, and we traded out some gear, and we have a Burl B2 that is coming here right now, and we're going to print a mix on with the Apogee Symphonies, and then we're going to take it and print it out with the Burl. That's what Ryan Williams does. He uses the B2. That was the other thing. The Rough came from a studio that had a lot of Burl converters, and I just had this kind of thing, this low-mid thing that I was chasing that, you know, I felt like, I think that, I'm hoping that this will also kind of get us some more juice. But there you have it. And I'll bounce out the Burl. I'll come back and tell you how it is. I can't play you the bounces because it's an unreleased major label thing. I can't do it, but I can tell you about it. And there you have it. Onward and upward. Getting some big, fat, nasty, gnarly drum sounds now. And again, simplifying the rig. Also, I had stuff all the way down the bottom, pulled it all up. The punch 10 was down there, popped it up here. Trying to get things up where you can see them and simplify. You know? It's killer, man. Still have the oral exciter with the big bottom inserted on toms. And I think that's really it. No more new EQs, man, on mixing. That'll be nice. Make your life easier. Also, in the midst of this mix, we really drastically changed some of the EQ points on the Sontec. Chasing the rough. I'm gonna write a book called Chasing the Rough. Sweet. Oh, nice. It's green. We don't have enough green equipment. Now we have some green equipment. Look at us. Good Lord. Are we going to dual wire off?
Off.
Internal, external?
External.
External.
Set it for
88 for now.
Well, if we're going to test on what we're going to test on, let's go ahead and move it to 44.1.
Right. Perfectamundo. All right, what's this peak reset? I guess it's probably the little,
for the meter.
Little red overs.
It's pretty.
Yeah, put it in. Let's do it. Hey, what's up, Hemi Hamstone? Hemi's excited about the Burl, right? Burl on? Go ahead. All right, let's see. Not too exciting when it turns on. All right, here we go. All right, kids. I can't play the for you because it's not my place. It's a unreleased major label record, but the Burl B2 kicks ass. It sounds good, man. It sounds way good. It adds, weight. It adds a little weight, but it's not just the weight. It makes it, I don't know how, it's weird, but it makes it more exciting. It's just some weird, it like created this weird energy, like it, the way,
beat.
the way we looped it, like we looped it just prior to going into the core verse, and when we played the Apogee one, and then when we played the Burl one, like instinctively I couldn't wait for the verse to start. I don't know how else to describe it. It added some kind of an energy or an excitement. I wish I could play it, but I can't. We'll do other things with it.
Yeah, we can fire up another mix.
So there you go, man. Has this been a hell of a few days?
This week is taking some years off my life.
Woody's like, I want the hazard pay. I'll get you a Diet Coke. Oh, Pepsi, sorry.